So, shucks. Sorry. Okay, how's the moment? Are you back? Can you hear now?
I can hear you. I can't hear the...
Well, no one's speaking yet, so we'll sort that out now.
And I can't find you on the screen anymore.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. All right, so let's start the meeting. Thank you all for joining again, and it's lucky to have so many people come and listen to what's happening here. Before we begin, I'd like to just ask a question, and you can write it down. There is a little chat box if you want to put it into the chat box, but just give yourself a minute and think about, there's a lot of distractions around, the cell phones are going, and there's just a lot happening. So the question would be, how present are you going to be to this presentation today on a scale of 1 to 10? And if you either just write it down or put it in the chat box, just think about that for a minute. How present are you going to be for our presentation today? Okay. I've just had a request quickly just to send the URL to someone, and I'm going to send that off quickly. And then we can begin.
Jason, can you hear me from your side?
Yes. Okay. All right. So today's presentation, as I said, is going to be split into two parts. Tim's going to do the first part on social media, and then afterwards we'll have a quick market update, depending on the time, from Eugene. Getting a lot of questions around should we be staying in the country or not, and what's going on, and everybody doesn't seem to be very positive. So Eugene's going to give us all a smile, and we're looking very forward to hear what he has to say. But we'll start off with Tim. The idea today was a discussion around social media. Tim's at a company called NextGen, and I've been working with NextGen before NextGen was NextGen. I used to work with his partner Bodo at a company called M-Cubed, and he went on from there to join NextGen. NextGen do a number of things, from social media that Tim heads up to recruitment and placement, IT training, and there's quite a lot that they actually do. My fascination around social media is starting to grow. Nicole on the side over there, she started helping me set up my LinkedIn page, and there's quite a lot that actually goes into it. We went to a presentation yesterday at Anchor. I see they've just joined us as well. And what was interesting there is the discussion around the size of Facebook, and they call it the fangs. There's Facebook, and basically there was, now I've gone blank, but Facebook and Instagram is what stuck out for me. Facebook has got 2.5 billion users, and Instagram is over 1 billion users. So just the idea behind that is we have access to reach 2.5 billion people from your home. So a couple years ago, that's just the mind-boggling numbers. How do you do that? And there is quite a science behind it, and I'm hoping that Tim is going to enlighten us all this morning. So I'm going to switch off, I'm going to mute everybody, and Tim, you can unmute yourself, and then we're going to hand over to you. Alrighty.
Perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
You can start.
Okay. Perfect. If you would let me, that would be fantastic.
Tim?
I'm going to start in just a sec. I'm just trying to get my presentation up.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm not sure if everyone can see it.
Not yet, no. You got to go share screen. That's
Now?
coming. There you go.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to start off. Well, let me just get a rough idea of who's joined us in this meeting. Would it be possible for everyone just to sort of introduce themselves and let me know where they are and what they do?
Could you? You're coming across a bit soft.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me know where you guys sit and where you are positioned.
Okay. Can you see in the chat box? We're getting a couple financial advisors, which I work with. We've got a few business owners. We've got a few. It's just a diverse number of people coming through. Investment analyst with Morningstar. Also another investment analyst.
Okay, perfect. So the broad range is sort of investment analysts to business owners. That's sort of the area we're working in, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a few company owners. There's a recruitment company similar to what you guys do. IT specialist. There's quite a few coming through.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so essentially what I've done here is I'm looking at social media in business and why you need to get involved in social media for business. Essentially, there we go. 90% of marketers say that social media marketing has increased their business exposure. That's quite a scary number. So, I'm just making sure, can everyone still hear me?
Yeah, I just want to, can you give me 1 second? Let me just mute everybody. There seems to be a lot of, and then I'll unmute you. All right. All right, Tim?
Okay, perfect. So can everyone now hear me?
Yes, there you go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so if we just restart there, essentially, why get involved in social media and why is social media important for your business? 70% of business to consumer marketers have acquired customers through Facebook, and that is 70% of engaged customers. So essentially, why do you want to get involved in social media for your business, and what will social media do for you? I think that last little stat there, 67% of all users look to social media before making a purchasing decision. I think that is quite an important stat, as that's more than half of your buying audience first looks to social media before they even think of making a buying decision. So who are we dealing with? 7.5 billion people sitting on this beautiful planet of ours, with a 4 billion or 4 billion people using the internet, and just over 3 billion active social media users. So essentially, by using social media, you have access to 3.1 billion people, which is scary numbers if you think of marketing. If we just look at the South Africa context, the South African context, there's 57 million people in South Africa. 30 million of those are internet users, and 18 million are active social media users. Again, social media allows us to penetrate this market relatively inexpensively. If we just look at what social media platforms are most accessed in South Africa, WhatsApp is obviously the top. WhatsApp is considered a social media. It is a messenger platform, but it is considered social media, and it is an avenue that we can start using to market. Facebook, YouTube are the generals. They sort of the standards. YouTube is considered the second biggest search console after Google, which again is quite incredible that essentially Google is followed by Google, because YouTube is obviously owned by Google. Instagram comes up there and substantially growing in user base and penetration at the moment. Instagram and Snapchat are your sort of biggest growers at the moment. Twitter, we're seeing a very big decline in user base. In fact, I think in the last sort of year, they've lost close on 500,000 users. So they're on quite a steady decline. So the question is why? Why do you use social media for your business? So essentially your main objective is to increase brand awareness. With nearly half of the world's population using social media platforms, it's a natural place to reach new and highly targeted potential customers. Social media gives you that opportunity to access a market that you probably haven't thought of relatively cheaply and inexpensively. But why do we want to use social media? Social media isn't meant to be a direct product push. Social media is meant to be a place for you as a company, or it's essentially there to create a brand persona and to humanize the brand. So essentially you need to create social media in order to build brand trust and brand loyalty. Communication is a big form or big part of social media. So in terms of social media, what are the main outcomes? It's reputation management, crisis communication, customer and audience engagement. And by customer and audience engagement, we are talking about random questions here and there, or in some of the bigger accounts, you will have questions every single day asking about a product. And it gives you that opportunity to start creating a relationship with that specific client. And the greater your relationship is with that client, the greater the buying potential of that client. We're also seeing that social media has become the point of call for customer service and customer support. More and more adults are turning to social media to air complaints, and it's an opportunity for you to market to them. And what I mean by that is, if your brand is consistent, clear, quick in terms of the feedback and how you get back to a customer, you start building more brand loyalty, brand trust. Who's drawing on the presentation? So research published by the Harvard Business Review shows that brands who don't meet expectations of social media damage their bottom line. So essentially, if you're not active on social media, you're not talking to your customers on social media, you are going to lose your customer base. Social media allows you to establish your brand as a thought leader. So essentially, you are able to start producing documents and start producing content that establishes you as a thought leader in your specific genre or your specific field. And we're finding that more and more people are trusting businesses who are seen to be thought leaders or seen to be innovative and ahead of the game. Social media also allows you just to stay on the top of mind. So essentially, if you have consistent content and good content, you're able to consistently deliver and remarket to your potential customers on an ongoing basis, and you need to start building that relationship with your customer so that whenever they think of something to do with your business or product, you're essentially what they're thinking of. Facebook and Facebook ads, in fact, Facebook and Instagram ads allow you to generate quite effective leads. And by that, I mean physical. It could be anything from first name, last name, to email addresses, to phone numbers, to fields that they're involved in. Targeting specific job levels, specific demographics to generate your leads. So by having highly targeted campaigns, you can quite effectively generate good, solid leads for your business with very little spend. If you have a website that you need to drive traffic to, social media is one of the key motivators to drive website traffic. And there's two things that influence it here. So essentially, you can start pushing people through to your social media or through to your website from your social media channels, as well as the fact that by having social media that links through to your website, you improve your search engine optimization or your SEO. And theoretically, you should improve your ranking or your listing on Google. So if people start looking for your business, by having that improved listing score or having that improved SEO score, you can garner more organic traffic. No matter what product you sell, social media can always help you sell it. And that generally means that you need to look at what channels will work for you, who's your target audience, what their online persona and online habits are, and you can start targeting those channels in order to sell your products. Social media isn't just about your brand and pushing your product. You can also access influencers, and influencers are essentially people who you've brought on board to drive traffic to your social media channels and to your products. And you can do this by product collabs, competitions with different companies. There's a number of different mechanisms that you can use, but essentially word of mouth drives 20 to 50% of purchasing decisions. So just by just by good strategic use of influencers, you can drive more purchasing from your customers. It also is important to get people to talk about your brand on social media. The more people talk about your brand on social media, the bigger your reach will be. And essentially, the quicker and faster you will grow as a business, or the quicker and faster your fan base or followers will grow. That stat is again, so more than 50% of internet users say they follow some sort of celebrity or influencer accounts on social media. And you probably aren't aware of it, but you probably do follow an influencer account at some point. The better influencer accounts don't push product down people's throat. They speak about a product, but it is very subtle and very well thought of. You don't want a influencer who essentially is driving product down people's, or just driving your product, because then it is seen as just this, people being paid for it. You want people to perceive it as real, organic. So essentially you want people to perceive it as real and organic. You don't want people to perceive it as fake and forced, essentially. Content is king. The correct content delivered at the right time can generate large returns on investment for very little budget. So what content you put out there and how you put it out and when you put it out speaks and drives a lot more traffic to your social media channels, your website, than badly thought of content, boring content. So when you start looking at social media, you need to start considering what content you're going to put out there, how you're going to put it out there. And because social media is essentially social media is a platform for engagement. It communicate with your client. You do not want to only be pushing product, because people find product boring. So essentially, you need to look at pushing content that drives engagement, and it drives questions, and it drives people to speak about the brand. In the past 2 years, content consumption on Facebook has increased by 57%. And that's a stat from 2016. We haven't seen the latest stat, but I can guarantee it's probably increased by 10% over the last 2 years. Viral. So what do we mean by viral? If the point of social media is to get people to speak about your brand, then going viral is pretty much the pinnacle of getting people to speak about your brand. And you essentially go viral if there's just a massive explosion of engagement, shares, and reach of a specific campaign. By going viral, sorry, I just want to just add something. By going viral, you can also access markets that you wouldn't generally access. And because of the virality of the content, you are accessing it for very, very little budget. If you have a very good campaign that goes viral, you probably could, just getting that content out there will produce leads and sales. So how do we source content? There's 2 ways we can source content, and it's through sourcing ideas. So it's essentially engaging with your customer base and engaging with your customers on social media to find out what content they want to see. Customers prefer to see content that they want to see. They don't want to just be delivered content. If they are involved in the process, they will engage with that content better, and the return on that content will be better. You can also look at sourcing material. So essentially, if you run competitions or you follow specific hashtags, you can produce user-generated content. And user-generated content allows you to access greater and bigger audiences. So what we mean there is, let me think of a brand that uses it quite effectively. I don't know if you guys know the Fujifilm South Africa brand. But essentially, they've utilized user-generated content very effectively. They look at photographers using the Fujifilm system, and they feature these guys on a weekly or daily basis. And essentially, by accessing that user-generated content, you are bringing in your audience as well as their audience to your pages. So by accessing both audiences, you're bringing a cohesion between the two brands, or between the two pages. And essentially what you're going to try to do there is to lure their audience into your brand. Learn. So social media generates a huge amount of big data. And by big data, I mean demographics, age, all the main sort of readily available information about your client. And by utilizing the analytics and the stats that social media can give you, you're able to access this big data and start making smarter business decisions. So if you start noticing that your demographics are following a certain sort of path, or you're only hitting a certain demographic, you can start tailoring your content to that demographic. Facebook advertising. So Facebook advertising is very similar to Google AdWords, and Google AdWords has been around in the market for quite a while. But Facebook advertising or Facebook advertising and Instagram advertising allows you to target people quite effectively. It allows you to campaigns to target a specific niche. And by targeting specific niches, you're able to deliver content to that niche quite effectively and quite for very little, for little budget. And by using, okay, so essentially what we found is that the return on investment on Facebook ads at the moment is far greater than the return on investment on Google AdWords. So I'm not saying get rid of your Google AdWords entirely, but I would seriously consider looking at Facebook advertising to coincide with your Google AdWords spend if you are spending. Retargeting. So essentially, the Facebook advertising allows you to retarget towards clients you already have. And by retargeting, you can upsell or cross-sell into that specific or that user base or customer base. And again, it's quite easy to do, and it's quite effective in terms of cost. Reporting and analytics, we sort of covered that a little bit earlier, but essentially reporting and analytics, because everything is handled through software, you're able to pull quite extensive data out of these reports, including things of like when people are accessing your page, how people are accessing your page, sources, so essentially where they've accessed from. And this will just allow you to start, again, targeting specific sources or specific avenues and start utilizing your budgets better. Okay, so that's essentially where social media sits in your business. I didn't want to keep it I didn't want to make it very long. I didn't want to bore people to death. But social media is something we could speak on for hours and hours. It is literally something that we could sit and speak about for a good solid day if we needed to.
Thanks, Craig. Tim, sorry, I was just reading Craig's name at the bottom over here. Let me just put my video back on. I think that there's probably a couple questions, and I'll open the floor to a few questions before we go over to the market update. But I've got a question that I would like to open with. I've tried to get involved with the social media. As I said, I've put together a LinkedIn page, and I'm on all the different platforms. But the thing for me is that it's so overwhelming that I just look at it and actually don't do anything. So where would a good starting point be if you want to start building a brand, start marketing yourself? And then do you build a brand as a personal brand, or do you build a brand as a company, or both?
So a good starting point would be to start figuring out who you actually want to target. So where does your target sit, and well, your target market sits, and then start developing content that is suited to that target. So whether it is written, whether it is video, whether it is those are the sort of decisions you need to start making straight out. But what you need to start doing before you even start doing that is building history. So in the first couple of months, you don't worry about followers, don't worry about likes, don't worry about engagement. You need to build a history, because without a history, you're not, without a consistent history. And by consistency, I mean you need to be posting on a consistent basis at the same sort of time, at the same sort of, and by building history and consistency, you start building trust. People don't enjoy brands that just start and there's nothing. There's nothing on the page. There's no history. There's nothing to relate to. They'd rather look at a page and go, okay, there is history here. Let's find out more. So a good starting point would be to build that history on your different social media platforms, and build a brand as a personal brand or through a company. It really depends on where you sit and how the company functions.
Okay, thank you.
If you've got multiple, does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Are there any other questions coming up that anyone would like to ask?
Yeah, can I raise one
from Jeremy?
Okay, let's start
just following Jason's question. In terms of budget, what do you, like Jason starting out or a new business is starting out, where do you advise clients in terms of budget to get going?
So because social media is relatively inexpensive to get going with, in the beginning, don't even worry about Facebook ad spend or physical spend. Get that history together. As soon as you get that history together, you can essentially start budgeting and getting that going. But what we sort of look at, and what our sort of benchmark is, on Facebook, we look at about 30 Rand spend to hit 1,000 people. So that's pretty inexpensive. 1,000 people reached for $30.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, Martin, did you have a question?
Sorry, I wanted to make a separate point. Yes, I wanted to make a statement as much as a question, to say that, you know, once you go down this path, you've got to be very vigilant, because, you know, anything negative that happens with your brand gets escalated probably as broadly or more broadly than something that's positive. So we had an incident this week where one of our staff, an intern, was engaging in a negative way with somebody on her Facebook profile. And that guy then took a screenshot of that, which included threats of death and all sorts of things, and posted onto the Mindworks Facebook feed. So, and it was hidden in a comment on a post that had been made. So, you know, people may or may not see that, but, you know, the fact that this intern on her Facebook profile says, you know, my views are my own and not that of my employer, doesn't stop that from bringing her employer into disrepute. So, you know, you've got to watch those platforms really carefully once you've got them, and you've got to, you know, have a policy about how you deal with that kind of thing when it does happen, and it's going to happen.
Yeah. So essentially, you need to have a very good, strong codes and policy in terms of social media for whoever is employed by you. And as much as people say that it is their personal page and that it doesn't relate to the company, it does bring the company into disrepute. You had a classic example this week of that ABSA management guy who had quite a lot of racial slurs to say. And as much as we like to think it is personal, it's not. You are still dealing with a company, you are still involved with the company, and you start becoming associated to the company, so you therefore are a brand ambassador. Then in terms of so negative comments or negative exposure on social media, if you as a brand are able to reach that negative exposure and answer it efficiently and consistently, you generally are able to sway people's opinion. So you are generally able to sway people's opinion, and actually it could become a positive marketing tool.
And by the same token, if a thing gets viral, it's almost impossible to contain. So I think it just requires lots of vigilance and care.
Thank you. Tim, there was a question posted here in the chat box by Kevin. He wants to know the best way to build a brand and a following, and the use of sponsored ads. I know you did discuss that, saying understanding your moving away from Google ads and getting involved with more on the Facebook side, but can you make a comment on that?
I can indeed. So essentially what we're finding is, so these companies are in it to make money. You can't get away from it. Facebook wants to make money. Instagram wants to make money. Pinterest, Google, they all want to make money. But essentially, forcing Facebook to access a bit more of that audience. So by spending a little bit on a post or spending a little bit on a campaign, you're just accessing a bit more of the audience, as well as trying to get that ad out to an audience that isn't involved in your page. Does that sort of answer the question?
I hope so. My internet connection went off a bit there, so I hope, did everybody get an answer there? Okay. Thank you for that. He did get an answer. He said, yes, thanks. It did come through. Tim, thank you so much for your presentation. I am just a bit conscious of time, and so I'd like to just have a quick market update that Eugene's prepared for us. But if we have any more questions, I will send out your email address. And would you be happy to answer a couple of questions if guys got a hold of you directly?
More than happy, yeah. So if anyone wants to get a hold of me, they're more than welcome to. But yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
Thanks very much, eh?
Pleasure.
Eugene, are you ready?
I'm ready, Jason.
You're going to make us smile.
Yes, I do actually feel there's some good news coming through. But let's just quickly have a relook at what's happened in August. So the month started off quite choppy, actually, specifically going back to trade wars. And I've got an interesting style. I just want to share that with everyone participating today. But Turkey and Trump. So Trump has been threatening Turkey on their steel and aluminium imports to put tariffs on that since July. And that escalated relatively quickly in the beginning, towards the end of July, beginning of August, when Turkey arrested a U.S. pastor in Turkey, actually. They accuse him of being a spy, and the U.S. says, but that is not true. So all of a sudden, that whole situation escalated. It's interesting to note, though, that Erdogan, the president of Turkey, has come out and said that interest rates are completely, I almost want to say illegal, but he's used very strange words on it. He just does not believe in interest rates, and their currency overall has completely been punished due to that. So it's just interesting to note again why it's so important to keep the Reserve Bank completely separate of the political side in any economy, because they've really, really taken a beating during that first week, almost 2 weeks. During that time, you could actually see the South African rand also weakening quite a bit just due to a global risk of trade happening. But subsequent to that, and that's why I said there is some good news, our markets have actually picked up nicely over the last, since the middle of the month. This month to date, the SWIX are up 3.74%. So that's quite a decent return. It takes us year to date, still negative, but only 1% negative. So all of the previous month's losses have basically been made up. And it looks like there is still momentum left for today, tomorrow, and Friday. The bond market has sold off quite aggressively, just risk of trade at the beginning of the month, but it has started picking up again. And then most of the US markets has also done relatively well. So that's also just on the back of we've had very limited engagement with Trump and trade wars. Aside from the Turkey at the beginning of the month, there has very, very limited reaction from him. One thing I would like to add to, and there was some concerns around our market did not react as aggressively as anyone thought it would, is when Trump started tweeting around land expropriation in South Africa. And it's actually so frustrating. He's the first person to go and attack fake news, and he's the first one to say, yeah, certain news agencies disseminate fake news around him, but he had absolutely no facts in that tweet. It's interesting to note our rand did depreciate slightly, but the government actually came in and said there's nothing happening in South Africa, which is true. So the land expropriation, it's an ongoing debate, and I think it's a crucial debate that needs to happen, and land expropriation will happen. Account what Cyril Ramaphosa is doing at this point in time is getting measures in place to prohibit anyone just walking onto any property and just taking it. The government owns a large amount of land, and that is the first land that will be used. And then, of course, they will approach certain farmers or certain people that do not use land that can be used beneficially. But again, they will be compensated for that. But yes, I think the media is making this a lot bigger than it actually is. Cyril is very clearly getting measures in place that it happens in an orderly fashion. But I do understand that uncertainty around it does create fear in people's minds. But overall, local markets looking really good. Looking forward to the rest of this month, even though it's just 3 days. As I mentioned, SWIX is up. The listed property market is up with almost 2%. So is the ALP. The bond market still slightly down, but year to date still a good return, outperforming cash. Steffi still delivering good returns, and then most international markets giving positive returns due to the rand weakness. So that's in a nutshell what's happened in the market this month. I don't know if there's any specific questions anyone would like me to touch on.
Anyone got any questions?
Not from my side.
Okay, Martin. Okay, it seems that no. Thanks, Eugene. Yeah, hopefully that the numbers will end up being positive, and that Gerbrand will be able to buy a razor. It'll be nice.
Sorry, can I quickly share one slide just with everyone?
Sure.
I should mention in the start I would like to show this slide. So this slide, I just want to illustrate the trade wars that's actually happened, and can everyone see this slide?
Yeah.
So again, everyone's been very concerned around the trade wars, and there's a lot of media around this. But what we're illustrating on this graph, specifically on the left-hand side, is what China and specifically Trump has threatened one another with. So they've been talking extremely big. They've been talking about 800 billion rands worth of tariffs being implemented between the two countries. Some of that contagion has moved over to the EU and Turkey as an example. But then the red line at the bottom illustrates what trade has actually been implemented. And you can see it's not even close to 100 billion yet. So there's always been tariffs on certain imported goods. But again, it's typical Trump style, going extremely over the top, threatening everyone, and then actually just a very, very small portion gets implemented. Another great example here is towards the beginning of the year when they talked about the washing machines and solar panels and the tariffs that they want to implement on it. A company like Whirlpool was extremely supportive of Trump imposing this, but of course, because then they can only sell their own washing machines in the US market. But then when they started with the steel and the aluminium in April again that they want to, or in March actually, when they want to implement trade tariffs around that too, they actually went 180 against Trump, because now all of a sudden for them to produce their washing machines in the US would cost a lot more. And it's just simple examples like that that illustrates that no one actually wins in these trade wars. There's absolutely, you can't protect certain industries, because as soon as you put a tariff on one item, it will influence another industry in that market as well. So yes, he's just trying to play big here. Some of the tariffs, as I mentioned, has been implemented, but it will have, let me rather say, it could have an inflationary effect in the US market. And because interest rates are so low, that could be a very, very dangerous situation for the US. And that's it from me.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody there any questions before we close off? Okay. All right, so I'm going to put out a request for the next meeting. I would like to have another meeting on the 26th of September. I've managed to speak to a lady by the name of Sarah Newcomb. And she is she's the head of behavioral research at Morningstar. She's written a book called Loaded, where she explains people's behavior around spending, people's behavior around money. And she's a very, very interesting lady to listen to. The downside to that is she lives in Washington. So I would request that I'd like to move the time to a lunchtime slot, because she is 6 hours behind and she wasn't so keen to wait up till 12:30 to do the presentation. So if anybody's got objections, let me know. I'd like to hold the meeting at about lunchtime, 1 o'clock. And that way she can do the presentation. She really is interesting. I'll put out a little bio around who she is and what she does, but you can also go have a look at her book called Loaded. And yeah, so if you've got any objections around that, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be sending out the invite for a lunchtime slot on the 26th of September. Yeah, is there anything that anybody would like to add before closing off? All good. So wishing you a lekker day, lekker rest of week, and look out for the invite, and we'll speak to you all soon. Thank you so much for joining.
Cheers, bye.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.